Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her diplomatic vessel, watching the alien world grow larger on the view screen. 3 months of careful messages had led to this moment. The Zephyrians had finally agreed to meet humanity face to face. The planet below looked like a massive hive. Tall spires reached into the purple sky, connected by bridges that sparkled in the light of their red sun. Ships moved between the structures like busy insects. Sarah had studied the reports until she knew them by heart. The Zephyrians were the strongest military force in this part of the galaxy. They controlled 12 star systems and had never lost a war. "Ma'am, we're getting a signal," said Lieutenant Morrison from the communication station. "They're clearing us to land," Sarah nodded. She wore the standard diplomatic environmental suit, designed to protect humans from alien atmospheres. The bulky gear made her look bigger than her normal 5'6" frame. The helmet's display showed her vital signs and the air mixture around her. "Take us down, pilot," she ordered. The landing was smooth. As the ship touched down on the designated platform, Sarah could see hundreds of alien figures waiting outside. The Zephyrians stood in perfect rows, their insect-like bodies covered in natural armor that gleamed like metal. Some were 8 feet tall, others even larger. Sarah had read about their biology. They had evolved from predatory insects on a world where only the strongest survived. Their society was built around strength and dominance. The weak served the strong, and the strong protected the hive. It was simple and brutal. "Remember, let me do the talking," Sarah told her small team as they prepared to disembark. "These people respect direct communication. No jokes, no casual conversation. Business only." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. Sarah stepped onto the alien platform, her boots making soft sounds on the strange metal. The gravity here was slightly heavier than Earth's, but not enough to bother her. The team of diplomats and guards followed behind her. The alien delegation moved forward. In the center walked a figure that could only be Queen Vexithera herself. She was 12 feet tall, with 4 arms and natural armor that looked like it could stop bullets. Her compound eyes reflected the red sunlight like jewels. Behind her walked her court, scientists, generals, and advisors, all smaller than their queen but still imposing. The queen stopped 10 feet away from Sarah. When she spoke, her voice was translated by the universal communicators they had agreed to use. "Human Commander." The Queen's voice was deep and carried easily across the platform. "I am Queen Vexithera of the Zephyrian Empire. We have agreed to this meeting to evaluate your species for possible trade relationships." Sarah stepped forward and gave a slight bow, as the cultural experts had advised. "Your Majesty, I am Commander Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth Government. We're honored by this opportunity to meet." The Queen studied her with those strange compound eyes. Sarah felt like she was being examined by a predator deciding if she was worth hunting. "Your messages spoke of trade and cooperation," the Queen said. "But we know little of humanity beyond your words. We must see what kind of beings we might be dealing with." The Queen paused, then made a gesture with one of her 4 arms. The movement was clearly a command. "Remove your environmental suit," Queen Vexithara ordered. "If we are to speak as equals, we must see each other as we truly are. Take off your helmet." Sarah heard her team shift nervously behind her. Lieutenant Morrison took a half step forward as if to object. Sarah held up a hand to stop him. The Queen's request was not unexpected. The cultural briefings had mentioned that Zephyrians valued truth and directness above all else. Hiding behind armor or protective gear was seen as a sign of weakness or deception, but there was a problem. The atmosphere on this world was toxic to most species. The air contained high levels of sulfur compounds and trace amounts of methane. Most alien visitors needed full environmental protection just to survive. The Zephyrians knew this. They were testing her. Sarah reached up and began releasing the seals on her helmet. Her team watched in silence. The alien delegation seemed to lean forward slightly, clearly curious about what they would see. The helmet came off with a soft click. Sarah took a deep breath of the alien air. It smelled strange, like old metal and burnt matches, but she could breathe it without any problem. Her lungs processed the toxic atmosphere as easily as Earth's air. The effect on the alien delegation was immediate. Several of the smaller Zephyrians took steps backward. Others made chittering sounds that the translator couldn't interpret. But it was Queen Vexithera's reaction that was most striking. The massive alien queen went completely silent. Her compound eyes seemed to widen, though it was hard to tell with her alien features. She stared at Sarah's face with an expression that might have been shock. Sarah knew what the queen was seeing. Her face bore the scars of her military service, a thin line across her left cheek from shrapnel during the Mars Colony Rebellion, and a burn mark along her jawline from a ship fire in deep space. Her skin was darker than most humans, tanned by years of exposure to solar radiation on different worlds. Her eyes, adapted for Earth's bright sun, seemed to glow with an inner fire in the dim red light of this world. But most importantly, she was breathing their poisonous atmosphere without any visible effort. How? The Queen finally asked, her voice quieter than before. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," Sarah replied, though she had a good idea what the Queen meant. "How are you breathing our air? Our atmosphere is toxic to most carbon-based life forms, yet you stand there unprotected, unharmed." Sarah smiled slightly. It was not a pleasant expression. "I suppose I should explain something about humans, Your Majesty. We evolved on what the galactic community calls a death world." The Queen's head tilted slightly, a gesture that seemed to indicate curiosity. "Earth has an oxygen-rich atmosphere that would be toxic to many species," Sarah continued. "Our sun bathes us in radiation that would kill most life forms. We have creatures on our world that inject poison, others that could tear apart your warriors with their bare claws. We have plants that can kill with a touch, weather that can destroy cities, and diseases that have killed millions of our people." Sarah took another breath of the alien air. "Your atmosphere is actually quite mild compared to some of the environments I've worked in." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Around her, the alien court whispered among themselves in their own language. Sarah caught a few words that the translator picked up. Impossible, death world, and predator. "You speak of your world as if it were trying to kill you," the Queen said finally. "It is," Sarah replied matter-of-factly. "Every day. And every day we survive it. We don't just survive it, we thrive because of it." Queen Vexithara looked at the human commander with new eyes. When she spoke again, there was something different in her voice. Something that might have been respect or perhaps fear. "I think," the Queen said slowly, "that we need to discuss more than just trade agreements." Sarah nodded. "I think you're right, Your Majesty." As the alien delegation led them toward the spires of the city, Sarah could feel the change in the atmosphere. The meeting had taken an unexpected turn. She had come here to negotiate trade routes and cultural exchanges, but she suspected that what happened next would be far more important than either side had originally planned. Behind her, Lieutenant Morrison activated his comm unit and sent a coded message back to Earth. "First contact successful. Situation developing beyond initial parameters. Advise command that we may need to revise our assessment of human-Zephyrian relations." The message would take weeks to reach Earth. By then, Sarah suspected, everything would be different. The throne room of Queen Vexithara was a massive chamber carved from living rock. The walls rose hundreds of feet overhead, covered in detailed carvings that told the history of the Zephyrian Empire. Bioluminescent strips provided soft light that changed color with the Queen's mood. Sarah walked beside the Queen as they entered the chamber. Behind them came her diplomatic team and a group of Zephyrian nobles. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the vast space. "Your species fascinates me, Commander Chen," the Queen said as they approached her throne, a structure that looked like it had been grown rather than built. "In 3 days of discussions, you have challenged everything we thought we knew about humans." Sarah nodded politely. The past few days had been intense. What started as trade negotiations had become something much more complex. The Queen had insisted on learning everything about human biology, history, and capabilities. "Your Majesty has been very thorough in your questions," Sarah replied. The Queen settled onto her throne, which adjusted itself to her body. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a chair that had been brought in for Sarah. "We must discuss what I have learned." Sarah sat down, noting that even in the chair she had to look up to meet the Queen's eyes. Everything in this room was built for beings much larger than humans. "Tell me again about your scars," the Queen said without preamble. Sarah touched the mark on her cheek. "This one was from the Mars Colony Rebellion. Shrapnel from an explosive device. And you survived a bomb attack," the Queen stated. "Several, actually. That was just the one that left a mark." The Queen leaned forward. "The burn on your jaw? Ship fire. The environmental systems failed on a transport vessel. I was part of the damage control team. You worked in a burning, depressurized ship? For 6 hours until we could get the systems back online." The Queen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, Her voice carried a note that Sarah couldn't quite identify. My scientists have analyzed the atmospheric readings from our first meeting. You were not just surviving our air. Your body was processing it efficiently. Better than our own people in some cases. Sarah waited. She had expected this conversation. How? The Queen asked simply. Human lungs are very adaptable, Sarah explained. We evolved to handle a wide range of atmospheric conditions. Earth's oxygen levels have changed dramatically over our planet's history. We developed the ability to extract what we need from almost any breathable atmosphere. Our air contains compounds that are toxic to most species. Sulfur compounds. Methane traces elevated carbon dioxide, Sarah listed. Yes, I know. My body filters out the harmful elements and processes the rest. It's not comfortable, but it's not dangerous for me. The Queen's compound eyes seemed to study every detail of Sarah's face. You speak of surviving poison gas as if it were a minor inconvenience. Compared to some of the environments I've worked in, it is. Tell me about these environments. Sarah considered her words carefully. I've served on 17 different worlds, Your Majesty. Some had atmospheric pressure that would crush most beings. Others had radiation levels that would cook most life forms in minutes. I spent 2 years on a research station orbiting a neutron star. Impossible. We keep detailed records, if you'd like to review them. The Queen stood suddenly, pacing to one of the massive windows that looked out over her city. My people are the strongest military force in this sector of the galaxy. We have conquered 12 star systems. Our warriors are bred for combat, enhanced with technology, trained from birth to be perfect soldiers. She turned back to Sarah. Yet I am beginning to suspect that a single human could defeat my strongest warrior in personal combat. Sarah kept her expression neutral. Your Majesty, humans prefer peaceful solutions to conflicts. That was not an answer to my observation. Sarah met the Queen's gaze directly. No, it wasn't. The Queen returned to her throne. Yesterday, my medical staff ran scans on you during the health screening. They found bone density levels 40% higher than what should be possible for a being of your size. Muscle fiber density that suggests strength far beyond your appearance. Reflexes that register at the upper limits of our equipment. Earth has heavy gravity, Sarah said simply. How heavy? About 20% heavier than your world. You live your entire lives under crushing force that would break the bones of most species. We don't think of it as crushing. It's just normal. The Queen activated a display that appeared in the air between them. It showed Earth from space, a blue and white sphere surrounded by the black of space. My scientists have been studying your homeworld based on the data you provided. The radiation from your sun should sterilize the surface. The weather patterns show storm systems that would devastate our strongest cities. Your oceans contain creatures that could tear apart our largest ships. Sarah looked at the image of her home. It's beautiful, isn't it? Beautiful? The Queen's voice carried disbelief. Commander, your planet is a nightmare. How does anything survive there? Everything survives there, Your Majesty. Not just survives, thrives. Earth has more biodiversity than any other world we've encountered. Life finds a way to adapt to every possible environment, including humanity. Especially humanity. We're not the strongest or fastest or smartest species on Earth, but we're the most adaptable. We can live anywhere, eat almost anything, and survive conditions that would kill most other life forms. The Queen pulled up another display. This one showed video footage from Earth. Hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, forest fires. You call this home? I call it training, Sarah replied quietly. The Queen went very still. Training? Every day on Earth is practice for surviving in hostile environments. Every storm teaches us to endure. Every predator teaches us to fight. Every disease teaches us to recover. By the time a human is old enough to leave Earth, they've already survived things that would kill most galactic citizens. You're saying that your entire species has been forged by constant warfare with your own planet. That's one way to put it. The Queen was silent for a long time, studying the images of Earth. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. How many humans are there? About 12 billion on Earth, maybe 2 billion. More spread across our colonies. 14 billion, approximately 14 billion beings who have been trained from birth to survive impossible conditions. Sarah nodded. The Queen shut off the displays and sat back in her throne. Her compound eyes reflected the changing light as her mood shifted. Commander Chen, I invited you here to evaluate humanity for trade partnerships. I thought we might exchange resources, perhaps technology. That's still possible, Your Majesty. Is it? Because what I'm realizing is that humanity doesn't need trade partners. You need something else entirely. What do you think we need? The Queen was quiet for a moment. I think you need worthy opponents. I think you need challenges that can actually test your capabilities. I think you need a galaxy that can push back against your people the way your homeworld pushed back against you. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Your Majesty, humans aren't conquerors. We explore, we learn, we build. We don't see conflict, perhaps not, but conflict will find you, Commander. When the rest of the galaxy learns what I have learned, some will see opportunity, others will see threat. Both responses will lead to the same result, which is war, Commander Chen. Not the small conflicts we've had between star systems. Real war, the kind that reshapes the galaxy. Sarah stood slowly. Are you threatening us, Your Majesty?
No, the Queen replied immediately.
I'm warning you, and I'm making you an offer. What kind of offer? Queen Vexithara rose from her throne, towering over Sarah. But for the first time since they had met, Sarah got the feeling that the Queen was not trying to intimidate her. An alliance, Commander, because there are forces in this galaxy that make my empire look like children playing at war. Forces that have been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge them. And I think they may have finally arrived. The research facility was deep underground, carved into the living rock beneath the royal palace. Queen Vexthara led Sarah through corridors lined with databanks and analysis equipment. Zephyrian scientists scattered before them, bowing deeply as the Queen passed. My people have been busy, the Queen said as they walked. 3 weeks of studying human physiology, psychology, and culture. The results are disturbing. Sarah followed the massive alien Queen into a laboratory filled with holographic displays. Charts showing human biological data floated in the air alongside psychological profiles and cultural analysis reports. Disturbing how? Sarah asked. Dr. Zixthon, the Queen's chief scientist, approached them. He was smaller than the Queen but still towered over Sarah. His compound eyes glittered with what might have been fear. Your Majesty, the scientist said, his voice translated by the communication device. Perhaps we should discuss this privately first. Speak freely, Doctor. Commander Chen should hear this directly. The scientist hesitated, then activated a display. We began with standard biological analysis. Commander Chen provided tissue samples, blood work, neurological scans. The initial results seemed normal, within expected parameters for a previously unknown species. Sarah waited, sensing there was more. Then we compared the data to your cultural records, Dr. Zixthon continued. Commander, you told us that your people engage in recreational activities for pleasure. We assumed these were social gatherings, artistic pursuits, perhaps games of skill. They are, Sarah said. You mentioned something called mountain climbing. Yes. This involves scaling vertical rock faces hundreds or thousands of feet high, often without safety equipment in freezing temperatures, with minimal oxygen. Some people enjoy the challenge. The scientist stared at her. For pleasure. For pleasure. You also mentioned deep-sea diving. Correct. Descending into crushing depths where the pressure would instantly kill most life forms. Surrounded by predators with limited air supply. It's actually quite peaceful once you get used to it. Queen Vexthara moved to another display. Tell him about your military training, Commander. Sarah sighed. She had known this conversation would come eventually. Standard Earth military training involves survival exercises in hostile environments. Desert survival, Arctic survival, jungle warfare, zero-gravity combat. For how long? Dr. Zixthon asked. Basic training is 6 months. Specialized training can take years. And during this training, how many candidates die? Sarah paused. Die, very few. The training is dangerous, but we have safety protocols. What percentage suffer serious injury? Maybe 20% require medical treatment at some point during training. The Queen and her scientist exchanged a look that Sarah couldn't interpret. Commander, the Queen said slowly, my warriors train for combat from the moment they can walk. They are selected from the strongest of our species, enhanced with technology and pushed to their physical limits. Our casualty rate during training is less than 1%. That's very impressive, Your Majesty. You're missing the point. Your people voluntarily undergo training that is far more dangerous than what we force our elite warriors to endure, and you do it as a matter of routine. Sarah was beginning to understand their concern. Your Majesty, perhaps I should explain something about human culture. She moved to the center of the room, where she could address both the Queen and the scientist. Humans don't just survive dangerous situations, we seek them out. We climb mountains because they're there. We dive to the bottom of the ocean to see what's down there. We explore space because we want to know what's beyond the next star. But why? Dr. Zixton asked. What drives this behavior? Curiosity, challenge, the need to test ourselves against the limits of what's possible. The Queen activated another display. This one showed footage from human recreational activities. Extreme sports, adventure racing, competitive fighting. Explain this, she commanded. The video showed humans jumping from aircraft, racing vehicles at dangerous speeds, engaging in hand-to-hand combat for entertainment. Mixed martial arts, Sarah identified. One of our sports. Sport? The Queen's voice carried disbelief. These humans are trying to seriously injure each other. Within rules and safety guidelines, yes. For entertainment. For competition. To test skill, endurance, and determination. Dr. Zixton pulled up medical data. Commander, we analyzed injury rates for what you call contact sports. The data shows that participants regularly suffer trauma that would disable most species permanently. Sports medicine has advanced considerably. Most injuries heal completely with proper treatment. That's not the point, the Queen said. The point is that you willingly participate in activities that cause injury. For fun. Sarah looked around the laboratory, seeing the fear in the aliens' faces. Your Majesty, I'm beginning to think there's been a misunderstanding about human nature. On the contrary, the Queen replied. I think we're finally understanding it correctly. Dr. Zixton, show her the psychological profiles. The scientist activated a new display showing complex charts and graphs. We analyzed human behavioral patterns based on your historical records. Commander, your species has been in a state of almost constant warfare for your entire recorded history. That's true, Sarah admitted, though we've made significant progress toward peace in recent centuries. Define peace. Sarah thought for a moment. Well, we haven't had a global war in over a century. Most conflicts are regional, and casualty rates are much lower than historical averages. How much lower? Instead of millions of deaths per conflict, we're down to thousands. The Queen and scientist exchanged another look. Commander, Dr. Zixton said carefully, most civilized species consider a conflict with even hundreds of casualties to be a catastrophic tragedy. And we agree. Every death is regrettable, but the reality is that humans are competitive. We compete for resources, territory, ideologies, sometimes just for the sake of proving who's stronger. You compete by killing each other. Sometimes. We prefer economic competition, sports, political debates, but yes, sometimes conflict escalates to violence. Queen Vexithara moved to a final display. This one showed human dietary habits. Explain this, she commanded. The display showed humans consuming various substances, alcohol, caffeine, spices, foods that registered as toxic to alien biology. Your people regularly ingest poisons, Dr. Zixton observed. Coffee, alcohol, and spicy food aren't really poisons, Sarah protested. Caffeine is a neurotoxin. Ethanol is a cellular poison. Capsaicin triggers pain receptors. But in small doses, they're enjoyable. You enjoy consuming toxins. We enjoy the effects. Coffee helps us stay alert. Alcohol helps us relax. Spicy food, well, some people like the sensation. The Queen was very quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Commander Chen, my species evolved as apex predators on a world where only the strongest survived. We built an empire based on military strength and the dominance of the powerful over the weak. We consider ourselves to be among the most formidable warrior races in the galaxy. She paused, looking at all the data surrounding them. And we are terrified of your people. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Your Majesty, humans aren't monsters. We're explorers, scientists, artists. Yes, we're capable of violence when necessary, but most of us prefer peaceful solutions. I believe that, the Queen said. But here's what frightens me. You don't even realize how dangerous you are. You think of your capabilities as normal. You consider your death world to be a pleasant home. You treat mortal danger as entertainment. You consume toxins for pleasure. We're adaptable, Sarah said weakly. No, Commander. You're not adaptable. You're nearly indestructible. And what's worse, you don't even seem to understand that fact. Dr. Zixthon pulled up one final chart. Commander, we ran simulations based on human capabilities. If your species were to engage in serious conflict with any known galactic civilization, the result would not be war. It would be extermination. Sarah stared at the data. The simulations showed human forces overwhelmingly defeating every known alien military. That can't be right. The modeling is very thorough, the scientist replied. Human soldiers operating in environments that would kill other warriors, immune to chemical weapons that would devastate alien forces, capable of enduring injuries that would incapacitate any other species. And that's assuming conventional warfare. What do you mean? Queen Vexithara answered. He means that's assuming your people fight like civilized beings. If humans were to wage war the way you live your daily lives, embracing danger, seeking challenge, treating survival as a competition, there would be no force in the galaxy capable of stopping you. Sarah looked around the laboratory at all the evidence of human superiority. For the first time since arriving on this world, she felt truly afraid. Your Majesty, she said quietly, what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Commander Chen, that humanity needs allies very badly, because when the rest of the galaxy learns what we have learned, they will have to make a choice, submit to human dominance, or unite to destroy your species before you become unstoppable. And which choice will you make? The Queen looked at her for a long moment. That, Commander, is what we need to discuss. The combat arena was a massive circular chamber deep within the royal complex. Ancient stone walls rose to a domed ceiling hundreds of feet overhead. The floor was covered in sand that had been stained dark by centuries of combat. In the center stood a raised platform where challengers faced each other before the assembled court. Sarah stood at the edge of the arena, looking down at the fighting space. Queen Vexithara sat on her throne, which had been moved to overlook the proceedings. Around the arena, hundreds of Zephyrian nobles filled tiered seating, their compound eyes glittering in the dim light. You understand that this is voluntary, the Queen said, her voice carrying clearly in the vast space. These are cultural demonstrations, not mandatory trials. I understand, Your Majesty, Sarah replied. She had been on this world for 6 weeks now, and she was beginning to recognize the Queen's moods. Today there was something different in the alien ruler's voice, something that might have been anticipation, or perhaps dread. The first demonstration involves our traditional combat sport, the Queen explained. Think of it as comparative athletics. A gate opened on the far side of the arena. Through it walked a Zephyrian warrior that was impressive even by their standards. He stood nearly 10 feet tall, his natural armor gleaming like polished metal. His forearms moved with fluid grace, and his compound eyes tracked every movement in the arena with predatory focus. This is Champion Credigar, the Queen announced. He has held the arena title for 8 years. He has never been defeated. The champion moved to the center of the platform and waited. His posture suggested confidence bordering on arrogance. The rules are simple, Dr. Zixthon explained from his position near the throne. Combat continues until one participant yields or is unable to continue. No weapons are permitted. Serious injury is discouraged, but accidents do occur. Sarah nodded and walked down the steps to the arena floor. As she approached the platform, she could hear the murmur of conversation from the assembled nobles. She caught fragments that the translator picked up. Small, fragile, this should be brief. She climbed onto the platform and faced the champion. Even in the low Zephyrian gravity, which was about 20% lighter than Earth standard, the alien warrior was intimidating. His reach advantage was enormous, and his natural armor would make landing effective strikes difficult. Begin when you are ready, the Queen called out. Champion Credigar moved first, as Sarah had expected. His attack was a sweeping strike with 2 of his arms, designed to overwhelm an opponent with reach and power. It was the kind of attack that would devastate most opponents in a single blow. Sarah wasn't there when the strike landed. She had dropped low and moved inside the champion's reach, where his long arms became a disadvantage. Her first strike hit him in what passed for a solar plexus on his anatomy. The blow was precisely calculated, not enough to cause serious injury, but sufficient to disrupt his breathing. The champion staggered backward, clearly surprised. The arena had gone silent. Sarah pressed her advantage, moving in a pattern that her instructors had called controlled aggression. Every strike was aimed at specific targets, nerve clusters, joint points, areas where even natural armor had weaknesses. She fought with the efficiency of someone who had learned combat in environments where a single mistake meant death. The champion was skilled, but he had learned to fight other Zephyrians. His techniques were designed for opponents who shared his basic physiology and fighting style. Sarah fought like nothing he had ever encountered. The match lasted 3 minutes. It ended when Sarah locked the champion's primary arm in a hold that would have broken the joint if she had applied full pressure. The massive warrior yielded immediately. The arena remained silent as Sarah helped the champion to his feet. She bowed respectfully as Earth military protocol required after any combat encounter. "Impressive," Queen Vexthara said, though her tone suggested she was not entirely surprised. "Champion Credegar, what is your assessment?" The warrior was still breathing heavily, but his voice was steady. "Your Majesty, the human fights with techniques I have never seen. Her movements are economical. No wasted motion, no excess force. She defeated me without appearing to exert significant effort." Sarah returned to the royal platform. "Your Majesty, I hope I didn't cause any offense." "On the contrary, Commander, you have provided valuable data. Dr. Zixthan, your analysis?" The scientist was studying readings from sensors that had monitored the combat. "Fascinating. Commander Chen's heart rate never exceeded what we would consider a normal resting rate. Her movement patterns suggest training far beyond what we initially estimated." "The next demonstration," the Queen announced, "involves our traditional feast of welcome." Sarah felt a moment of concern. She had studied Zephyrian customs, and their feasts were notorious throughout the galaxy. They consumed foods that were toxic to most species, partly as a cultural tradition and partly as a test of strength. Tables were brought into the arena, laden with dishes that looked like they belonged in a xenobiology textbook, rather than a kitchen. The smells were indescribable, some merely unpleasant, others actively hostile to human olfactory senses. "These are delicacies from across our empire," the Queen explained. "Some are challenging even for our own people." Sarah looked at the spread of alien cuisine. She recognized some items from her briefings: fermented seafood from a high-radiation world, fruits that contained alkaloids similar to strychnine, meats that had been aged in conditions that would kill most bacteria. "I'm honored by your hospitality," Sarah said, taking a seat at the table. The first course was relatively mild, a soup that tasted like seawater mixed with copper pennies. Sarah drank it without visible reaction, though she made a mental note to have her medical team run blood tests later. The second course was more challenging, a shellfish-like creature that was still moving slightly when served. The flavor was intensely bitter, with an aftertaste that seemed to attack her taste buds directly. "This is our traditional battle food," the Queen explained. "Warriors consume it before important fights. It is stimulating." Sarah ate the entire portion, though it took considerable effort to keep her expression neutral. Around the arena, she could see Zephyrian nobles watching her with increasing amazement. The third course was genuinely dangerous. Sarah could smell the toxins before the dish reached her table. The meat had been prepared with spices that registered as warning signals to every survival instinct she possessed. "This dish has never been consumed by an alien species," Dr. Zixthan mentioned casually. "The biochemical components are incompatible with most forms of life." Sarah looked at the plate, then at the Queen. "Your Majesty, I should mention that human biology is quite adaptable. Our livers are very efficient at processing toxins. Are you certain you wish to attempt this?" Sarah picked up the eating utensil and cut a piece of the meat. "On Earth we have a saying, 'When in Rome, do as the Romans do.'" She ate the entire portion. It was possibly the most unpleasant experience of her life. The meat seemed to fight back as she chewed it, and swallowing it required genuine willpower. But she managed it without visible distress. The final course was brought out with considerable ceremony. It was a drink that glowed with its own light, served in a crystal container that seemed to absorb the surrounding illumination. "This is our most sacred beverage," the Queen said solemnly. "It is consumed only during the most important rituals. The ingredients include elements that exist nowhere else in the galaxy." Sarah accepted the container and examined the glowing liquid. Her enhanced senses detected radioactive isotopes, complex organic compounds, and at least 3 substances that Earth science didn't have names for. "Your Majesty, may I ask what the traditional dosage is for this drink?" A single drop is sufficient for most ceremonial purposes. Sarah looked at the container, which held perhaps 2 ounces of the liquid. I see. She drank half of it in one swallow. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every cell in her body seemed to light up with energy. Her vision became preternaturally sharp, and she could hear conversations from across the arena. The sensation was not entirely unpleasant, though she suspected it would have killed most life forms instantly. How do you feel? Dr. Zixton asked, his scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocol. Energetic, Sarah replied truthfully. I suspect I won't need sleep for a while. The arena was silent again. This time, the silence stretched on for several minutes. Finally, Queen Vexithara spoke. Commander Chen, in 6 weeks you have consistently demonstrated capabilities that should not be possible. You have breathed our air, defeated our strongest warrior, consumed our most toxic foods, and survived what should have been a lethal dose of our most sacred poison. I've tried to be a good guest. Your Majesty, you have been remarkable, and that is precisely the problem. The Queen stood from her throne and moved to the edge of the arena platform. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. We have completed our evaluation of humanity. The results are conclusive. She paused, looking directly at Sarah. Humans are not potential trade partners. They are not suitable for standard diplomatic relations. They are not compatible with galactic civilization as we understand it. Sarah felt her heart sink. After weeks of building understanding, it seemed like the mission was about the ancient vault lay far beneath the royal palace, deeper than Sarah had imagined possible. The walls were covered in symbols that predated the Zephyrian Empire by thousands of years. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows as Queen Vexithara led her through corridors that seemed to pulse with their own alien rhythm. What you are about to see, the Queen said as they walked, is known to fewer than a dozen beings in the galaxy. It is the reason our empire exists. It is the purpose we have served for the last 1,000 years. Sarah followed the massive alien ruler through a final doorway into a chamber that took her breath away. The room was vast, filled with technology that seemed to blend organic and mechanical elements in ways that defied human understanding. But it was not the technology that shocked her. It was what the technology was studying. In the center of the chamber, suspended in some kind of energy field, was a creature unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. It appeared to be made of pure energy, constantly shifting between different forms, sometimes humanoid, sometimes geometric, sometimes something that her mind refused to process. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. This, Queen Vexithara said quietly, is our prisoner. Sarah stared at the energy being. What is it? A scout. An advance guard. A messenger, perhaps. We captured it 300 years ago when it attempted to infiltrate our core systems. Dr. Zixton emerged from behind one of the monitoring stations. Commander Chen, meet one of the ethereals. The name sent a chill down Sarah's spine. I've never heard of them. Few have, the Queen replied.
They are the real rulers of this galaxy.
They have been for over 10,000 years. I don't understand. The Queen activated a holographic display that filled the air around them. It showed a map of the galaxy with various sectors marked in different colors. Every major civilization you know of, the Zephyrian Empire, the Crystal Consortium, the Machine Worlds, the Hive Collectives. We are all client states, puppet governments. We maintain the illusion of independence, but we serve the ethereal's interests. Sarah studied the map. All of you? All of us. The ethereals don't rule directly. They prefer to work through organic intermediaries. They provide technology, guidance, protection from external threats. In return, we maintain order in our assigned sectors and provide them with resources. What kind of resources? Dr. Zixton answered, energy, specifically life energy. The ethereals feed on the bioelectric patterns generated by organic consciousness. Sarah felt sick. You're talking about slavery. We're talking about survival, the Queen corrected. The ethereals are not cruel masters. They take only what they need, and they protect us from threats that would otherwise destroy our civilizations. What threats? The display changed, showing regions of space marked in black. The dark zones, the Queen explained. Areas where civilizations once flourished, now empty of all life. The ethereals tell us these are regions that refused their protection, that tried to resist their guidance. Sarah looked at the energy being suspended in the chamber. It seemed to be watching her, though it had no visible eyes. How long has this been going on? The current system has existed for approximately 10,000 Earth years, Dr. Zixton replied. Before that, the galaxy was in constant chaos. Wars that destroyed entire star systems, plagues that sterilized worlds, technologies that tore holes in space itself. The ethereals brought order, the Queen continued. They ended the wars, contained the plagues, restricted dangerous technologies. In return, they asked only for a small portion of the life energy generated by each civilization. Small portion, about 10% of each population, harvested over a natural lifetime. Most beings never even realize it's happening. Sarah turned away from the display, trying to process what she was hearing. You're telling me that the entire galactic civilization is a farm? We prefer to think of it as a symbiotic relationship, the Queen said carefully, and you've been part of this for 1,000 years. The Zephyrian Empire was created specifically to serve this purpose. We are the enforcement arm, the military power that maintains order when other methods fail. Sarah looked back at the energy being. As she watched, it seemed to shift its attention to her, focusing on her in a way that made her skin crawl. What does this have to do with humanity? Queen Vexthera and Dr. Zixton exchanged a look that Sarah was beginning to recognize. It was the look they got when discussing something that frightened them. Commander, the Queen said slowly, when we first made contact with humanity, we reported the encounter to our ethereal contacts, as required by our agreements, and they were very interested. More interested than they had been in anything for centuries. Dr. Zixton pulled up another display. This one showed energy readings and biological data. The ethereals measure civilizations by their potential life energy output, he explained. Most species generate a relatively consistent amount of bioelectric activity. The patterns are predictable, harvestable, manageable. What about humans? Humans are different. Your life energy patterns are chaotic, unpredictable, and the total output is orders of magnitude higher than anything we've ever seen. Sarah felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. They want to harvest us. They want to study you first, the Queen corrected. The ethereals are very careful. They don't fully incorporate a new species until they understand how to control them. Control them how? Every client species has control mechanisms built into their society. Economic dependencies, technological limitations, cultural restrictions that prevent them from developing beyond certain thresholds. Sarah looked around the chamber at all the advanced technology. But you seem pretty advanced to me. We are allowed to be advanced in ways that serve ethereal interests, Dr. Zixton explained. Military technology, resource extraction, population management. But certain technologies are forbidden. Faster than light communication, quantum manipulation, dimensional physics, anything that might threaten ethereal control. What happens if you try to develop those technologies? The Queen was quiet for a moment. Civilizations that violate the restrictions are visited by the cleaners. Cleaners? Ethereal enforcement units. They sterilize the offending worlds, leaving them as examples for others. Sarah turned back to the energy being. It pulsed with what might have been amusement. How many species have they cleansed? Hundreds over the millennia. Maybe thousands. Sarah felt anger building in her chest. And you've just accepted this? For 1,000 years, you've helped them enslave the galaxy. We've helped them maintain peace, the Queen replied. But her voice lacked conviction. Before the ethereals, this galaxy was drowning in chaos. Before the ethereals, the galaxy was free. The Queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was very quiet. Yes, it was. So why are you telling me this? Why risk everything to reveal their existence? Queen Vexithara moved closer to the energy being's containment field. Because, Commander Chen, we have been waiting for a species that could change the equation. A species that the ethereals couldn't control. And you think that's humanity? I know it is. The data is conclusive. Dr. Zixton activated a final display. This one showed projections and probability analyses. Human life energy patterns are not just chaotic. They're resistant to ethereal influence. Your species has evolved natural defenses against psychic manipulation. You're essentially immune to their primary control mechanisms. Moreover, the Queen continued, Your physical capabilities make you nearly impossible to eliminate through conventional means. The ethereals rely on client species to enforce their will, but no client species could successfully wage war against humanity. Sarah looked at the projections, seeing humanity's odds of survival against various galactic civilizations. The numbers were staggering. You're saying we could fight them? I'm saying you could win, the Queen corrected. And that's why we need your help. Help with what? Queen Vexithara turned to face her directly. Commander Chen, the Zephyrian Empire formally requests that humanity lead a rebellion against the ethereals. We offer our complete military support, our intelligence networks, and our lives in service to this cause. Sarah stared at the alien queen. You want us to liberate the galaxy? I want my people to be free. I want all people to be free. And for the first time in 10,000 years, I believe it might be possible. The energy being in the containment field suddenly pulsed brighter, as if reacting to their conversation. Sarah could feel its attention on her like a physical weight. If we do this, Sarah said slowly, there's no going back. The ethereals will throw everything they have at us. Yes. Billions could die. Billions are already dying slowly, over centuries of harvesting. At least this way, they'll die fighting for freedom. Sarah looked around the chamber one more time, at the ancient technology, the captured ethereal, the data showing humanity's unique position in galactic history. I need to contact Earth, she said finally. Of course, we've prepared secure communication equipment that should be undetectable by ethereal monitoring systems. And if Earth agrees? Queen Vexthara smiled, an expression that was surprisingly human despite her alien features. Then, Commander Chen, we go to war. Real war.